if you are thinking of going external, reporting for private companies and things like that, know a bit more than what they're going to pay you for the reports. As a reporter, you don't want to make mistakes. You know you will, but you don't want to, and that hurts. And that gives you a proper kick. Your confidence goes down, everything goes down because you're questioning yourself.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Skilled Personnel Podcast. My name is Bozz Kyriakos, and delighted for you to join us again. Today we have a very interesting episode because this is our opportunity to meet the co-host. So we wanted to have this conversation with Baruch and Bozz, as you know him. So the other thing just to bear in mind is, because it's a meet the host, it's also going to combine the two series that we got, which is the Roots to Radiography and Crossroads, all in one. So it's like a bonus episode. So with that in mind, I'm going to allow the co-host to introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Bozz, Baruch Vidian to pretty much nobody. I am a reporting radiographer, been qualified since 2012, qualified to report adult chests in 2015. I've worked in a number of different trusts across Manchester, major trauma centres and slightly smaller, call it district hospital. I also spent some time reporting in the private sector for in-health reporting for a few years. Pretty much general radiography. I've some CT training right at the beginning, but didn't choose that route. Yeah, it's pretty much me.
Yes. Well, Bozz, as we've experienced so far, we've had the pleasure of meeting a couple of people so far, but this was a great time for us to actually spend some time and people to meet the co-host and find out a bit more about you. So I think a good place to start then, because I know the story, but to tell other people how you got into radiography and what was that particular uh, conversation? Yeah, how did it come about?
Well, it's a funny one, really. Sorry for the diehards, being born and being born wanting to do radiography. That really wasn't me. I kind of fell into it, luckily for me. I went to a fairly religious Jewish high school, so which didn't provide A levels. So I left school at 16 after my GCSEs. Went studying kind of, I suppose it's called yeshiva. It's like a Jewish college, Jewish law and things like that, which you can take forward to becoming um, like rabbis and things like that. Did that for a couple of years, then came back and kind of started thinking, right, what do I do now? I've no qualifications, no, I've done retail jobs and stuff like that, like everybody else to get through. But what am I going to do going forward? What do I want to do myself? I spent a lot of my childhood the other side of the uniform in hospitals. Um, Nothing ridiculously serious, but spent quite a lot of time over the years in hospital as a patient, and I knew I was drawn to healthcare. Obviously, at that point, as soon as you think of healthcare, you automatically think nursing and medical school. Having no A levels, and there were very few kind of access courses to medicine as there are now. There's other routes into medicine, so that was a no-go straight away. So I went into college and did at that time it was called Access to Nursing and Allied Health Professions, which pretty much opened the book for nursing and all the AHP roles. It's kind of separated a little bit now, depending on what profession you want to go into. And I was looking around. I had a couple of friends who were physios, a couple of friends who were OTs, and nothing really. I was a quarter of the way through the course and I still wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. And then one of the tutors at the college was like, you're liking the science, you like tech. One of my students went on to do radiography a couple of years ago. Why don't you have a look at that? And it's still shocking to me now. I was like, what's radiography? What is it? You become a radiographer. It's a degree course. What's a radiographer? Literally out of the blue, no idea. So he goes, tell you what, here's a couple of numbers for some clinical tutors. I know that all universities want you to do some shadowing days. Go and have a look. So at that point, the universities allowed for as pretty much as many shadowing days as you want, as long as you arrange it. The clinical tutor then sends a little, I guess, a little intro to you to the university to get your application going. So the first hospital I went to, I'm not going to name it, clinical tutor was wonderful, and she remembered me. She was an absolutely incredible person, and on the first day of my first job, once I'd qualified, the senior manager called me in and goes, "We've got mail for you." So sorry, what? It was a so I opened it and there was a little note in it that said, "Good luck, Bozz. Can't believe you've reached this far." And a little, those stick-on parrots with and it said World Radiography Day on it. And it was from this clinical tutor who was my first ever radiography contact. And that was really nice. However, that first shadowing day, I really didn't enjoy it. The atmosphere, the way I was treated wasn't, other than the clinical tutor. Once I was put into the department, the atmosphere just wasn't. I didn't really like it. It was hierarchical. One of the radiologists walked into the staff room at one point, and it was almost like the sergeant major coming into a drill hall. Everyone stood to attention. It just wasn't a cohesive atmosphere, which was the thing. So I went back to college and I was like, don't think it's for me. He goes, fine, give it one more go. I've got another hospital, I've got another contact, go and have another go. So I went to a different hospital, and I was put with a wonderful, pretty newly qualified radiographer who was absolutely lovely, normal, talking about really talking to me and encouraging me about the pros and the cons, telling me about the job, and really selling it. And I was like, all right, this is a completely different atmosphere. They treated me like someone who could potentially be their colleague, and that made such a difference. I was like, okay, yeah, we'll go down this route. Then 3 years later, I qualified. So no, I didn't have the regular intro to it. My family's not healthcare; most of them are army. Um, so yeah, it was an interesting route, and I kind of fell into it. But looking back, I made the right choice.
Yeah, well, I think you made the right choice too, Boz. But yeah, I could be biased, of course. But one thing, just touching upon your sort of days as a student, those those sort of moments that the doubts that creeped in, it seems to me like it was personalities that helped you and circumstances. Were there any other times where you weren't sure you were making the right decision? If that's creeping.
Yes, I think I was. So I was officially classed as a mature student. I wasn't mature in any way, uh, um, but I think because I was coming in as a mature student, but I hadn't really had any academia. So I think if I'd done A levels, it kind of prepares you a little bit for that more solid studying. So during my student time, the clinical side of it, I feel like I it took to it like a duck to water. I really, really enjoyed it. I found it not easy, but I found it natural learning curve. The academic side of it, I had to really work at. and some of my peers. So my year was split pretty much 50-50, mature student and school leaver, because there was still the bursary back then. So there was a lot of people. It was kind of people were coming out of the financial crash and things like that. So there were a lot of people who were making U-turns in their lives and coming back to a what's seen as a steady, secure job. So the academic side, I think some of the mature students had done previous degrees, they knew what they were in for. But the school leavers, they'd just come out of A levels where you have to study your butt off to get the grades you want. So I think I felt at a disadvantage. I don't think I was, but it felt to me like there was a slight disadvantage. And second year, the academia ramped up because you'd done all the basic stuff and they wanted to really thrash out the academic side of the degree. I did struggle a little bit. I didn't fail anything, thankfully, but it was harder for me. And it make it, when you're struggling for deadlines and you're doing 30 hours of clinical placement, and plus I was working to get through the degree as well. So the stresses did catch up with me from time to time, but I was enjoying it. I was enjoying the course, which I think pushed me through. And there were a few that, different bits of the course. There was one girl who came in November. We did kind of a taster week, meet your clinical placement, go and have a look. And she, after 2 days of that, decided it just wasn't for her, which I think was good because it was that early on that she could, switch over and do something else. The attrition rate for radiography is by and large quite high, I think. From what I've heard, most universities they do have people that leave the course for a number of reasons, whether it's clinical placement or the academic side or a mixture of both. I kind of enjoyed the mixture. I enjoyed the fact that it's 50-50 clinical placement, which was what drove me, because that was the bit I really enjoyed. The academic side, I understood the need for it, but didn't enjoy it as much. So did I think about changing? No. Did it cross my mind that, why am I not going and working a 9 to 5? But there's no progression in in the things that I would have had access to without any qualifications or experience.
Yeah.
So no, I
Is
ran with it.
Yeah. Well, you spoke about two different experiences on the clinical placement side. So that sort of says to me that there's a different experience there. But what I guess what advice would you give students who similarly go through that sort of that challenging process and with in mind that each circumstance is going to be different, but anything that you see as something which is uh, across the board?
Yes and no. So as I mentioned, the actual dynamic of the hospital that you're working at, the department you're working at, was for me a major factor. The first hospital, if I had got that as a placement hospital, I don't know. I honestly don't know if I would be here today as a radiographer. But your mindset as a student also is what you need to realize is if your placement isn't ideal, you don't. Different hospitals have different dynamics. Some are, you're one of us. You might be a student, but you're one of us. You're coming on our nights out. You're talking to you in the breaks, and we're going for lunch with the students, things like that. Whereas others have a student room. You're a student. We keep those strict boundaries. We're friendly with you, and I think for me, I needed the arm around me. You're one of us. Let's go. And that's how I try to be in my practice. But there are times, there's only so many hospital placements per university course. And sometimes you've got to realize that just because you're training there doesn't guarantee you a job there. You still have to go through the interview process. And not only that, but you don't have to apply. If you can, you know, it might not be the greatest, you might not be having the best time in your placement hospital, but is it fulfilling your learning needs? Are you getting out of it what you need for your course? If you're miserable, different story. If you know you're actually not enjoying it, then speak to your university. People swap placements all the time for personal reasons, commuting reasons, any number of reasons. So there is that option if you're truly miserable. But if you're just there to get your learning needs, and then you can spread your wings, you can go and work wherever you want. And I think that's quite an important mindset to have. If is it, are you getting out of it what you need as a student? If the answer is yes, the grass isn't always greener. You might go try and change placement and dislike that one even more, or not enjoy it even more. It's for me, it's a balance of learning needs. Are they being covered? And also, are you enjoying it?
Yeah.
If you're not enjoying your learning, you're not going to want to learn. You're not going to push it. Your attitude will dip. The radiographers will see that, and it shouldn't affect us. But if we see students who are not interested, we'll try. But then after a while, why should we spend extra time teaching someone, or giving you tips and tricks and stuff if you're not interested?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that will worsen your experience. You're not getting out of it what you need. So go and ask radiographers, what's this? What are you doing? Ask the questions, and you will find in every hospital there are people who want to teach. And maybe you might have to just change your mindset a little bit and go, right, I'm going to seek out those people if I can. And if I can't, I'm going to get my head down. I need to do X, Y, Z. Let's do it.
Well, what obviously worked for you by the sounds of it, and it's generally how I work as well, was inclusivity. So you had the arm around you. Come on, Bozz, come in and do this. Worked really, really well for you. Um, and sometimes that's a character thing as well, isn't it? So talk about the sheets as involved. Um, and I guess that comes back to support mechanisms for students during their training. Just what are there outside of the clinical setting, outside of the university setting, from
Yeah.
a perspective of trying to get someone through the course. And then there's going to be always those anomalies, like you say, those people that just decide, yeah, it's either not for them, or they don't want to get as involved.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, there students come in all shapes and sizes and personalities and things like that, and there are obviously ones who are more outgoing and more inquisitive and really get in your face and teach me, which is wonderful, which is really good. But also that doesn't work for every radiographer. Some radiographers might see that as, oh, you're overconfident,
Yeah.
and or so personalities play a massive part in it, and you need to work out where you fit in the radiography department. There are those. I'm horrendously sarcastic, um, and I have a student who came up to me and went, "I like your sarcasm. It's funny, but it doesn't work for me. It's not. I don't. Um, I need a bit more straight answers. I don't get sarcasm as much." I was like, "Thank you for telling me." And now she's just gone into her third year, and we've got a great working relationship because she said, "How you're teaching isn't working for me. Can you work slightly differently when you're working with me?" And I think that's important for the students to know as well. You might not. So I'm very much I'll watch one and then go and push me to do one. Go and try it. And then once I get hands on, it makes sense in my head. Other people are, I need to know every in and out of this exam and procedure before I want to go anywhere near it. And that's fine as well. There's no point in doing something you're not comfortable with, because that just knocks your confidence and you're taking a step back in your learning. That doesn't work. So I think it's quite important for the students to know their own learning style, and don't be afraid to say to radiographers how you're doing it is great, but is it possible when you're working with me, when you're teaching me, can you do it slightly differently? Does that work for you? And that's really good for the radiographers as well, because we've got most places you're in your same placement for 3 years or at least a year. So if if you're not able to tell the radiographers I need a different learning space, a different learning style, you're almost wasting your time there.
Yeah. You know, it's you mentioned about the personality, but also it's quite clear that the environment that student goes into plays a huge part as well. And I never forget someone saying to me once that process they went through from being a student radiographer then to becoming a newly qualified radiographer. And they'd felt at that time they'd gone to the bottom of the food chain. And they were made to feel like that as well. And again, that's just down to the environment these people are working
Yeah,
in.
that's
So
a shame.
yeah, but you know, I think in many aspects, it just goes to show that there are different environments, different um, leadership techniques, and clearly, as this student told you, there's different ways that people want to be. So some will thrive in those kind of environments, and others won't. So it's about trying to find that happy medium. But it stresses to me the importance of support mechanisms throughout the way. So, Bozz,
Yeah,
we've done the routes to radio,
100%.
we've done the routes to radiography bit. Now I'm really keen to understand what day one looked like for you. So you found your, did you find a position at somewhere that you did your clinical placement or somewhere different?
So
You
no,
started in your role.
I interviewed, yeah, I interviewed quite a few different places. Where I trained was a district general. It was busy, and it I saw everything I needed to, but I wanted to see a more trauma oriented hospital. So I went to a city centre trauma centre as my first post, which was quite a change of pace. Yeah, it was much bigger hierarchy of management, busier. The trauma I was seeing was trauma. Um, it was right for me. I thrive weirdly in a very high pressured environment. I can keep a calm head. So seeing that pushed me to enjoy. I enjoyed it more. I love the clinical side anyway. I love the patient interactions and things like that. But the opportunities of I was going down to the resuscitation department and doing trauma series more often. So I was getting new relationships with the A&E consultants and the A&E doctors and nurses, and that for me gives me job satisfaction, creating connections all over the hospital. I mean, I'm ginger, I'm gobby, and I've got a capel on. I'm not inconspicuous, but at the same time, I'm also quite, oh, what are you doing? Even though it's got nothing to do with my job role, nothing to do with the patient I'm seeing. Oh, what's that? What's that? How do you do that? Why are you doing that? And I just like learning about different professions and different specialties and different things like that. And the bigger trauma center gave me much more access to highly specialized. It was a cardiac center, so we had a cardiac intensive care unit as well. So I learned a lot more about the cardiac side of things. We were trauma, so I got quite good friends with a lot of the A&E consultants and A&E trainees and things like that. So I managed to that, and we also were a vascular centre, so there was a lot of radiography specialties. We had a cardiac cath lab, we had an interventional team who were doing a lot of radiographer-led stuff. We had fluoroscopy, we had obviously the trauma CT and things like that, MR. We had reporting radiographers. So that's also what I wanted and why I changed to this hospital. I just wanted to see more, pretty much.
Well, you're obviously, I mean, one of the things that I often try to promote in people, if they possibly can, which is naturally curious, because natural curiosity creates opportunities. I am fascinated, and the people, the reporting radiographers, or those that are aspiring to, will ask the same question: how on earth, on a major uh, tertiary centre, did you manage to become a chest X-ray reporter? I mean, how did that thing happen? Because there's still sites now where chest reporting is still not developed, and largely they developed in VGHs. So tell me how that came.
So it was an interesting one. I count it as lucky that I knew from very, very early on I wanted to do reporting. Um, and there are those. I had a colleague who was retired, I think 3 or 4 years after I qualified, and he had stayed as a general radiographer, band 5, for 25, 30 years, and he was happy with that. That's exactly what he wanted to do. He wanted to come in, do his shifts, and go home. And that was quite nice to see that not everyone, you have to climb, you have to climb, you have to specialize. He was happy that was his job, and that was how his work-life balance was. He came in, did his job, left. I knew obviously that wasn't me. I needed to keep pushing myself, keep pushing myself. Um, and I looked around. I just didn't enjoy cross-sectional, so CT and MR. It just wasn't for me. It was fascinating. The images were incredible, and I found it interesting, but it wasn't for me. The process of being a CT or cross-sectional radiographer just didn't appeal to me in any way. Um, Fluoroscopy and the GI stuff I quite liked. I loved theatre, absolutely loved it. I just as much blood and gore as you can throw at me, I'm happy. Um, really enjoyed that. So I was thinking about the interventional radiography side of things, where we were the hospital I was had a lot of radiographer-led teams, like they were putting PIC lines and central lines and things like that in radiographer-led, which was I really enjoyed because it was more theatery, but also radiographer. But again, I quite enjoyed mentoring. I was a student mentor, and then I was a preceptor quite early on for newly qualifieds. I did my advanced clinical assessment course pretty early on, and I was just drawn to the knowledge acquisition and teaching side of the role as a radiographer. And the one that, when you're looking down that route, the main one of educational seemed to be reporting radiographers. It's not only the case. There are every specialty who are teaching oriented, but I saw the reporting radiographers. We had quite a big MSK reporting team, but there were only MSK reporters. But I saw them coming out and doing CPD teaching sessions for the other staff. They had the radiology registrars, they had A&E professionals, doctors, nurses, advanced nurse practitioners coming in and learning from them. So very early on, I was like, yeah, that's the route I want to go down. Chest reporting didn't occur to me. It wasn't a thing. It wasn't mentioned. We had 4 or 5 MSK reporters who had well established, and they were the gold standard of MSK reporting in that hospital. So all my CPD and professional development was guided towards reporting. I'm doing self audits, putting little teaching slideshows that went nowhere. They were for me, but they were building my CV, my CPD portfolio in that direction. I put myself in a box. This is what I want to do. And I can't stress enough, if you find your thing you want to do, make it known. Shout about it. Go and pester whichever specialty it is you enjoy. Oh, I've got 10 minutes. I've got a long lunch break, but I don't really want a long lunch break. Do you mind if I come and sit with you for 10 minutes? Do you mind if I go to your rotoring managers and go, if I get a CPD time, can you put me in X specialty? Because there are those who apply for everything. If a job comes out, doesn't matter what specialty, all they think about is the banding. They want to climb the bands. Purely, it doesn't really matter what the specialty is. I want to climb. I don't want to be a band 5. I want to be a band 6. I want to be a 7. Which is fine to a point, but there comes a point with highly competitive specialties, such as reporting. Ultrasound is always very competitive. That they're looking for more than just on paper. They want someone who can be part of their team and who is interested in and wants to be their specialty, not just any specialty. So that put me in good stead. And quite early on, a job randomly came out in the trust I was at for a chest reporting job. So I was like, okay, it says reporting on it, but chests, we didn't have any chest reporters. So I went for it because it was reporting, and I was like, oh, this is new. It's not the route that I thought I was going to have, but it's even more specialized because I would be the first. So thankfully, I successfully interviewed for that with another radiographer who trained with me very early on in my career. She was a bit more qualified. She'd been qualified, I think, a year or longer than me, but I was not even 2 years qualified. But because I'd put the work in, they were like, okay, normally a lot of hospitals are moving away from it, thankfully, because it's about the person for the job rather than have you got X amount of experience. So I think I was just gone 18 months qualified when I landed the training role. So it was I was lucky in the fact that I knew what I wanted to do and was in the right place at the right time and had put myself out there. So that was probably the first major crossroadsy type situation I saw myself in.
Yeah, so what you described to me was a breaking of the mark. So when I embarked on the journey with rig reporting, it was back in the early 2010s, right? And it took good 2 or 3 years to get traction with it. When it did, it really did take off. But what I experienced during that time was a real kind of process. And that process looked a little bit like this. You qualify, you go in, you then have 5 years. That was something that I used to see. 5 years. You have a minimum of 5 years experience. You may have done some cross rotation, and then you can then be considered to become a reporting radiographer. And that was, excuse me, that was, I know it's very different now, but that's what it was like back then. If you haven't done that 5 years, like you just come back to me when you got 5 years. So what you and your
Yeah,
colleague, what you and your colleague experienced for me was a breaking of the mold. And that is as much about you, Bozz, and your colleague as it is around the department having the foresight to do that.
absolutely.
The thing I was just going to add to that, which I think is a really important point for me, is I've sat with many radiology managers that would have certain people maybe apply for jobs, like almost how you described, which was someone who applies for everything. Oh, it's that person again, they're going to apply for that job. And I've always had it mentioned to me, and I believe it enough now to know that it's true, is that when you're doing a role like reporting, you're moving into a completely different type of environment, um, and responsibility. And not everyone has got the aptitude to do that, because the backbone that's required to be able to talk about your clinical decision making goes far beyond that initial point of when you start as a newly qualified radiographer. So there was often that scenario where people will apply and they go, "Oh God, well, I can't say to this person, don't apply," but they're not necessarily the
Yeah.
right people, and they have to go through that sort of process, rightly or wrongly. So just to kind of get your view on that from a perspective of maybe advising other people, if they feel like you said, this is something they really want to do, shout loud about it.
Yeah. The reporting is obviously your job role, but it's so much more. If I could just sit in a room and report X-rays, all that is required is knowledge, essentially. However, you're not sitting in a room by yourself just reporting X-rays. You've got people questioning you. You've got people coming and questioning all sorts of people throughout the medical professions, AHP professions are coming to you and kind of going, "What's this? What do I do? What have I? Do I do this?" And sometimes you have to disagree with them. You have to be able to obviously have the knowledge, because otherwise you wouldn't have qualified in the specialty or the course you've done. But you have to be able to back that knowledge up with your communication. And there are some people who are co colleagues of mine who, knowledge-wise and academia-wise, would have smoked me at the course and would be incredible at that knowledge base. But the other side of the job, the giving out of that knowledge, because I think pretty much every reporting radiographer has some sort of teaching built into their role. Some people aren't comfortable teaching or being questioned or having their reports and their knowledge questioned. You've put this on a report. Why? I'm a doctor. You're a radiographer. You will come across those type of interactions, and I think it's not for everyone. It's definitely not for everyone. There are people who would be incredible reporting radiographers if reporting was the only job, because it just required knowledge. But you need to decide, are you okay shouldering that responsibility? Because people will question, there will be discrepancies that pop up because we're human, we make mistakes. Being able to shoulder all that extra stuff is a question that people need to ask themselves before applying for any specialty, because each specialty has its add-ons rather
Yeah,
than just the certificate that you passed the course.
yeah, completely.
Yeah.
And leads me on to something that has regularly come through my mind. So one of the things we had to adopt during looking after the reporting service that I did at Riggin in-house was a threshold period of someone's having experience, and that was always doubled up with not just has someone had 2 years post graduate experience as a reporter, but also were they getting enough exposure to it in their uh, during their home trust time, both very, very crucial things. And over time, I realised how important it became, because there is an expectation as soon as you're signed off that as you just alluded to there, Bozz, there's a huge responsibility to your clinical decision making actions. But what has to, psychologically, this is a really interesting one. So reporting is probably one of the best examples of it. Is how you get better over time. What does getting better over the time look like? How do you go from being a reporting radiographer that's qualified and signed off there to a 5 to 10 year experience reporting radiographer? What does that difference look like?
It's a funny one. We've at my trust we've got a fairly newly qualified reporting radiographer who is asking me, when when is it going to be easy? So quick answer to that, never, because that's the job role you've got. It's not an easy role, but it's so the gaining experience is so she's always worried about I'm not doing enough, I'm not reporting enough. How come you're doing so many more reports than me? And that is simply experience. It's having so you've passed your course, you know a list of normals and you know a list of abnormal things and you're looking out for those. Humans aren't textbooks. Be wonderful, but very boring if we were. And it's having the confidence in your own decision making. Whereas I can look at an X-ray, a chest X-ray, and in X amount of time decide, right, that's normal. Whereas when you're newly qualified, you're still running through all the checks. You're eliminating everything. So one of our I think it was Nick was Nitzer when I was in uni said to us in one of his lectures. He said, if you hear hoofbeats, think horses, not zebras. And that stuck with me because that is the confidence, that is the growth as time goes on as a reporter. It's being able to say, "Oh no, that's definitely not zebras coming up the road." It's not that weird and wonderful 1 in 10,000 pathology that I saw in uni and was on my exam, because nothing else in the picture that you've been given for this patient fits. And it's being able to do that quicker. Being able to go, right, I've seen this now 1,000 times. It's that. Rather than kind of going, oh, what's that? I know what it is, but I'm just going to eliminate all the other things. It's that confidence in your own ability
Yeah.
is the massive, and there's no time scale on it. One day you will just notice, you go, oh, I've reported loads. Whereas last week I did half that amount. And that will come at a different point for everyone. But
Okay.
I think what you're saying about how you have to have an arbitrary cutoff, that before you said 2 years,
Mm.
as it was when I started working with you as well. Before that time, it might have been for one person 6 months into their post qualification that they got that, oh yeah, I can do this moment. Whereas others it will take longer. So
Yeah.
where do you draw the line? You know, I think pretty much every reporting company and reporting hospital have a different way of signing you off, and then the next stage is that it's your own expectations you have to manage, really, because no one's expecting you to be able to do 100 x-rays, 100 reports in a morning from day one. The management don't that's on you as a reporter. You go, oh, I'm not going quick enough. It will come.
Yeah.
And that's the growth you see as a reporter from my experience anyway.
Yeah. Oh, fascinating, Bozz, actually. I mean, I never asked that question before, so it's just really good to get that understanding. So you mentioned about coming to work on our service when was within in health reporting. You've got yeah, I want to sort of just tackle upon sort of your experience working, going from working in a hospital setting, your substantive role, where you've got that, you've got the everyday that then going into working in an external setting, because and I think it's quite useful to to probe this question, because there's going to be lots of people that are radiographer, reporting radiographers, that may be interested in doing external work. So it'd just be very interesting to get your thoughts on this.
Yeah, it's quite it's a different mindset, I think it is. So I started off doing a little bit of work with you while still working full time um, in my hospital trust, but then that changed after a couple of years because life got in the way and I needed more um, flexibility, and that was the major draw at that point. I really, my wife will tell you, I ummed and ahed about leaving my substantive role at the same time for a long time because for me personally, it wasn't necessary. I loved my job. I loved the people I worked with, and it was a safety blanket for me. And it was a big step to step away from that and then go full time with um, reporting in the private sector. Um, so some people are fine in their own company. I'm not. So so kind of traveling around the country on my own, reporting room, hotel room, things like that was a massive adjustment for me. And with the responsibility of the job role, the reporting, I think you need to be asking yourself the question, are you okay enough in your confidence that you can tackle the external stresses of simply doing the if you wanted to go full time in the private sector reporting. I think that needs people don't realize it's quite lonely because in my substantive trust, I was part of the reporting team, but I was also part of the department and the radiography team.
Yeah.
If you're reporting external, whether it's reporting remote reporting from home or in some as we did with in-health insourcing, so I'd be going into the hospitals. In my home trust, I sat in a reporting room. There's a radiologist next to me. I knew them all, so I'd be kind of go, "Do you mind just having a quick look at this for me for a second?" Whereas not only are you number driven in the private sector, you've got you're allocated a certain amount. You need to get through them, um, but you're also you're not part of that department. You don't know who the person is. Obviously, you'll have your contacts and things like that, but they're not necessarily a radiologist. They're not necessarily a working radiographer even. Sometimes they've been in management for years, and that's your contact. And you've got to be able to know when to say, right, I can't do this one. I don't know what's going on in this X-ray or this report. I need. Can you put me in contact with the person on site who can help me with this? And that again, it's you questioning your own ability and knowing where to draw that line. Um,
Mm.
and I think it's quite difficult to question yourself because you're qualified. You've obviously had X amount of experience. You've been put into this hospital to finish the reports of this list, or so therefore, why am I asking questions? But that is so important to know your red lines. I'm not comfortable doing that or those reports or that referral source. And that can be quite daunting as well because it's
Yeah.
all on you a lot of the time.
Yeah. Well,
But
look. Sorry, I'm terrible.
No, no, no. I can't remember where I was going with that anyway.
No, I think it was you were painting a picture that ultimately it's one responsibility to become a reporting radiographer. There's an additional responsibility and an experience of obviously working externally, which people have to consider as well. I think these are very important factors because I'm one that likes to promote enterprise within radiographers, empowering radiographers to improve their confidence in whichever part they are in their career. But ultimately, we have to make sure that because there's scope and regulations and processes and protocols that need to be followed. And ironically, even though some of that's uniform, Bozz, one of the things which is evident is that there's still some disparity in the way one trust do things to another trust do things, and that still exists now.
Yeah, 100%. But that's I haven't really spoken about this a lot, because I was working with you a lot of the time. I guess a warning is the title of this, what I'm going to say. But governance, as you've mentioned, if you are thinking of going external, reporting for private companies and things like that, know a bit more than what they're going to pay you for the reports. I say this because so most companies will make you get your own indemnity insurance. So a lot of radiographers don't know, but if you are a member of the Society of Radiographers, if you're working at a hospital trust, an NHS hospital trust, they provide an indemnity cover should all else fail. All the hospitals have their own indemnity cover for all their employees anyway, which usually covers, and you've never heard of indemnity insurance. You don't need to know about indemnity insurance because the vast majority, it will never come to this. However, when you're working privately, speak to anyone who works in any medical field privately, they don't have that hospital backing them. They don't have that indemnity insurance, and they don't necessarily have the SOR's indemnity insurance, which doesn't cover you when you're reporting externally for a non-NHS trust. And I did some work not only within health, who's you insisted on us, all the reporters, having their own indemnity insurance above whatever else you had in place for your company because that didn't cover it, and you were open about that. I did some work and was told that for a different company, and was told that all the work I did for them would be covered by their indemnity insurance, which was fine. I anyway had my indemnity insurance in place because I was still working with you guys. So something that every reporting radiographer is aware of. They mention it in university. I've interviewed for subsequent reporting radiographers, and one of the most important questions I ask and make sure to ask at that interview is, when you have a discrepancy, not if, when you have a discrepancy and it turns out to have an effect on someone or someone's care, someone's life, someone's family, whatever, how will you deal with that? And the answer we're looking for is learning. I learn from it so that I don't make those mistakes again. Every hospital has discrepancy meetings for the reporters, reporting radiographers, radiologists. The surgeons will have their own discrepancy type meetings. Every profession makes mistakes. It's one of those things. And I unfortunately had a discrepancy brought against me, and the indemnity insurance that I was told about didn't cover me as a personal person, because I was named because it was my report. Thankfully, I had my own indemnity insurance, which covers all sorts of things. But the HCPC contacted me to say, you have been named in a discrepancy and we're investigating, because there was a few ins and outs, but it came down to they were questioning my professional ability to work and my fitness to practice. It was the heading they used. Long drawn out process later, very long drawn out process. They dismissed it. They said that there's no case here. It's discrepancies. These, unfortunately, it's unfortunate, but these things happen, and it was dismissed. But what the warning I want to kind of, or the thing is, the process of those types of investigations and not necessarily hearings or something, but any internal investigation, whether it be in the hospital or an external, such as the HCPC looking into things, takes a long time. And it's hard. Even if you know 100% that you're not in the wrong, as a reporter, you don't want to make mistakes. You know you will, but you don't want to, and that hurts. And that gives you a proper kick. Your confidence goes down, everything goes down, because you're questioning yourself. Someone's said you've made a mistake. And if I didn't have my indemnity insurance, I wouldn't have been able to explain to the HCPC through you might need legal representation sometimes, you might need all sorts of things, but that is a possibility out there, because when you're in your trust in an NHS job, you're part of that department. And you're part of the trust, so they will protect you and back you with, even if it is a wrongdoing, but you're part of that organization, so their indemnity and their teams and their investigators and their management are on your side. So you've got those resources to be able to put your case forward, say, yes, there was a mistake made. Was it intentional or not intentional? No, it wasn't intentional. I've now learnt from it and going forward, etc., etc. What people don't think about when you go private is it's just you. The name they have is your name at the bottom of a report. And if a trust can, why would they take the blame for something they can put on to a different entity? And unfortunately, that's what they will do, because at the end of the day, each NHS trust is a business. And if they can absolve themselves of blame for something, they will, because that's just the nature of the beast. And I think that people need to be aware of that it's not the same as reporting in your home trust. You don't have your discrepancy meetings. You might not even know you've made a discrepancy. And all of a sudden someone high up will come and go, right, you're being investigated. And that, because you're a separate entity, all the preliminary stages will have been done behind your back with the reporting service management and the hospital management, because that's their contact. You're not the contact. You're there to do a job. So it can. I know that there's a number of people who have had that type of situation where they haven't been aware of an internal investigation or a discrepancy meeting, things happening, and then when they finally find out, it's come from somewhere like the HCPC, who's your governing body, who have the power to stop you working. And when it, and because you haven't been aware of all the rest of it, when it comes down, it can really give you a kick, and it affected me. It was even though I knew that down the line, once they have to go through all the procedures, it will be fine, and they will realise that it wasn't something. While it's going on, you are second guessing everything you do, and it was really really stressful. It really affected me. Thankfully, back out the other side, and um, reporting the same as I was before. Um, but knowing that having that responsibility is something that people need to be aware of.
It has been an incredibly challenging, or it was, should I say, an incredibly challenging period. Because you and I spent quite a lot of time speaking together, and I think actually, if I'm going to be completely honest with you, I think it's down to the personality, the character, and how much passion you've got for the profession. Probably got you through clinically, like to stay in the profession itself. That's an observation from me, knowing you as I do. The other thing, actually, that you call upon is that you still have an interest and a passion and a desire to continuously improve, which is something which and stay within reporting, which says to me that despite all of those, say, the experience that you had, you still want to continuously improve. And for me, one of the reasons why we set up the platform is that I want there to be mechanisms in place, Bozz, to be able to support people. Because the, 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 the profession on its own, and Insula can't just do it on its own, it does need external support. Now, what I'm going to say in that respect is that's fine. That's actually something which any organisation that provides services into the NHS, that provides services into the health sector, in my opinion, have an obligation to support other aspects of what it does. Now, whether that's yeah, an equipment provider that's just providing equipment, whether it's a service provider like a tele-reporting house or an in-source reporting house. Just because we're facilitating one part of the profession doesn't mean we can't support and shouldn't be supporting actually other aspects of the profession, because if we can, we should be. And so part of the aspirations and vision of Skilled Personal Platform, for example, was to be able to put support mechanisms in place to help radiographers that might be going through challenging periods in their career. Call it a crossroads, call it something that you've just described as well. For me, it's incredibly important to support the radiography profession, to support the Society and College of Radiographers and all of the other designated, bodies and representatives of radiographers to be able to say, look, actually, if we do this collectively, we stand a better chance of supporting people through challenging times. I'm a big fan of before we think about recruitment, let's look at retention. Let's think about retention. So just
Yep.
something, just something. I guess just to add to what you were saying there in terms of support mechanisms. I think we should all. It's very easy to turn a blind and sometimes it's hard and challenging. I get it when you've got challenges in your career to take on someone else's burden, but at some point you're going to need help. this, and so that ability to be able to call upon people, knowing that you've helped them down the line as well, is important. And I would say during those challenging times, I felt, even though I knew you for a number of years beforehand, I really felt like was that we got to know each other.
Yeah, no, I think that's quite important. Um, and so coming from my side of the platform as such, it's my ideas for it and its potential and what I would like to see it do obviously come from the radiographer side of things. You know, all I see is free platform, great stuff. What can it do for me? Whereas I'm not thinking about it as a business or a platform or your pet, your baby. You're trying to build something. So and the things that I see it doing are those I can't remember what the word is I'm looking for, but those support systems, those discussions that make people realize that I'm going through a hard thing, whether it's personally, professionally, um, academically. I'm not the only one who's ever had this struggle. I'm not the only one who's going through this struggle now. And there are people there who can kind of go, yeah, this is horrible, but look what you're doing. Look what it's reaching to. Look what's on the other side of it. I'm been there, or I'm going through it at the same time as you. Um, how about you try X, Y, Z? This helped me. Those type of things, and that obviously, I think it's got brilliant potential for recruitment down the line or different advertising space, I guess. But the side of it that is the supportive side, CPD opportunities, collaboration, academic collaboration opportunities, things like that, all in one place is what I think is what will draw people to it
Yeah.
more, because every hospital has its support systems, every department has its support systems. The organizations such as the SOR have support systems, the HCPC have support systems, but all of the a lot of those people aren't necessarily you, or you don't identify with them, or you just don't feel comfortable talking about something to that person. I say this to all the people that I line manage, all the new starters in my. I was like, I may be your named line manager, but there is a management group. If you don't feel comfortable talking to me about something, that's fine. Go and speak to somebody else who you might. And I think that's what this platform, it's opening up a whole, it's international. You might not feel comfortable because you're in a country that isn't your first language and you just want to vent. And you find someone on the platform who's from your home country and you can just vent in. They might not be able to help you. They might not have the resources or the reach to help you, but you can vent in your own language or your own colloquialisms, or and it's tiny things like that that I think is going to be brilliant on this because it's just in one place.
One of the things that I really feel like we need to encourage is there's those support mechanisms that you're talking about now, is how can we bring out the confidence for someone to ask something that's been on their mind. Like I said, they're a bit I don't know, shy, not have the maybe the environment internally that to actually say it's something they're interested in doing, or Yeah, you mentioned earlier about speaking openly about it. Some people don't find that easy, it doesn't come easy to someone. So perhaps the platform might give them that opportunity to do that. How do you do? Yeah, how do you go about doing this, for example?
I've got a good idea on that actually.
This is the right forum.
The main thing that people, I think the thing that people struggle with, let's say I struggle with, when I want to do something new or I want to push a boundary or I want to, whatever it is, I'm very pessimistic in that I'm going to apply for this job. I'm going to ask to do X. It's going to be a no, 100%. And that's just my mindset. And I feel sometimes that if I want to discuss something, run an idea by someone who, even if it's completely off the wall and never going to happen, I subconsciously think they're going to think I'm stupid. Or if I talk about it, they're going to change things so that it can't happen. It's just my negativity. I wonder if there's a way of people posting anonymously a question or something like that, where they can kind of go, I'm in this situation. What do I do? What do you think? That then they can get answers, and then if they want to, can continue with as themselves and
Yeah.
be it known. But I wonder if there's a way of doing that on the. I'm just throwing that out there
Well, the
because I
producer
think
and the
that
brand.
was something I've discovered is that confidence of putting my name to something.
Look, do you know what? Absolutely, all things on the table. I think that's a really good idea, and the anonymity of it allows the person the opportunity initially to say, "I'm not a friend. I'm asking for a friend."
Yeah,
you
asking for a
know,
friend. Yeah,
but the producer and the marketing extraordinaries list. So we can get on that. Definitely. And Boz, before we wrap this up, then, because it's been a really fascinating get to know you, even things that I didn't know. All good. And is there anything else you want to add? Uh, yeah, just tell the listeners out there just anything about, I guess, life in general, radiography, the profession, just anything you just want to share.
I think people need to be more aware of how far you can go as a radiographer, um, and the opportunities out there are. We see the NHS changing. We see physicians associates. We see nursing associates. We see apprenticeships popping up again in multiple professions, and the scope to merge roles is great potential, I think. So if you don't want to just you want to do reporting, but you also like the clinical side of things, there's hospitals now that have radiographer-led discharge. So there's reporting radiographers who are specialists in MSK, who have then gone on to do the some of the nurse practitioner courses, the triage and things like that. And they've merged those two roles. And I think people need to be proud to be a radiographer and be pushing those boundaries. Doesn't mean if that radiographer discharge, that's a nurse's job. It's not. It can be your job, and you can do it as a radiographer, and you can liaise with the specialist nursing team who are doing X, Y, Z, and go, how can we help each other? Because the danger in my mind of the NHS becoming too, thankfully it's not, but there is a danger of radiographers being insular and it's just a little world. Whereas if we work better with other professions, people like me will have heard of radiographers because they'll have come across them. So coming in, I would like to see a world where people don't go, radiography? What's that? Do you fix radios? Those type of things. I would love to see an end of that. And I think that because we're so central to healthcare, we have far more access to do that than a lot of other professions. So push those boundaries, make those contacts, attend A&E meetings, go to surgery, go to the different clinics and go, right, what can we add to this?
Yeah.
And I think that yeah, don't know how to finish that. That was quite good, but I needed an ending.
No,
I don't have one.
I can end it for you. I would say that there is a blanket unanimous. There would be a blanket unanimous agreement across all of radiographers now. That would say that they long for a day that radiography could be a household profession. That that almost lose that point of when someone's at school for them to know, not ask the question, it's a radiographer. So I'd say that's a really good place to end on. So, Bozz, I've really, really enjoyed this. Looking forward to doing many uh, podcasts with you, and genuinely would say to everyone, if they got the opportunity, if they haven't already, please register on the Skilled Personnel Radiography Network. And, yeah, really looking forward to the next podcast to come. Thank you very much, Bozz.
Brill. Cheers, Foddy.
Cheers.